Do not adjust your digital device. What you are about to see and hear may shock and appall you. Join our hosts as they encounter countless thrills, spills, chills, and hilarity as they explore the very weirdest in pop culture. The following media is so strange, so beyond the scope of what is normal, it will make you ask the question, why does this exist? Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Why Does This Exist? I'm Chris.
And I'm Rob.
And today we are going to be discussing a film, a film of the 90s that pretty much you couldn't really make it any other time, and it wouldn't be as fun. It was just as wild and carefree as the actor playing, well, several characters in the movie. We've talked about him before when we talked about the Pentaveret, which, as you could probably guess by now, if you're just listening and you're not like looking at which episode it is, we're talking about Mike Myers. We discussed him and his work a lot more in the Pentaveret episode, which was a while back. But for this episode, we are discussing Austin Powers, and we're discussing the whole franchise as opposed to individual movies, so that we could just kind of get a grasp on what's going on. I've recently watched the first one. I haven't gotten quite around to rewatching the others, but I've watched those movies so many times that they're pretty much embedded in my brain. And I still do some of the weirder gags from any of those movies. I'll just reference them, and anybody who's around will get it if they got it, and if they don't, then, it just looked like a jackass, and that's fine too.
I will say, I think the Austin Powers movies are one of the few franchises where it got better with the sequels. Like, generally when the sequels come out, they're not as good as the original, but I feel like Austin Powers really, like, Spy Who Shagged Me and Goldmember just got better and better, as they went along.
I would say in some capacities, I think Spy Who Shagged Me is a better movie. I think Goldmember is the weakest one out of the three, but I think
Goldmember's my favorite.
But I think there are elements of Goldmember that are much better than the other films. But anyway, if you don't know what this is, Why Does This Exist? We are a podcast that talks about the very weirdest in pop culture, whether that be a movie like we're about to do, a TV series like we just did, or just some really, really, really cool music like we've done a couple of weeks ago. We're going to discuss it. Anyway, all the other fancy things you got to do are in the descriptions. No one gives a shit about the bell notifications, so don't even fucking bother. Sub if you want, like if you must, but always cheat. I don't know. I'm trying to paraphrase Jesse Ventura badly. Anyway, that's the news. Here's the weather. You are now about to witness the true strength of street knowledge from a ragtag group of rogues, so let's get on with the goddamn show. Rob, let's continue this conversation.
Yeah. So for those who haven't seen Austin Powers, which I'm pretty sure most people have, but if you haven't,
unless you're a Gen Z or Gen Alpha, or God forbid, you'll be a Gen Beta kid soon. That's the only way that I see how you could not have watched these movies. But then again, the missus is a very smart young lady, and she only recently watched Austin Powers for the first time. And she is a younger millennial, so there is that. But she also grew up in a house full of girls who just probably didn't give a shit about this stuff. So, and also she would read, so she, just being a smarter lass. TV was not her strong suit in cinema, and that's where my dumb ass comes in.
So for those uninitiated, Austin Powers, the original International Man of Mystery, came out in 1997, and it was essentially a parody of '60s spy movies, mostly James Bond, but also others like Man from U.N.C.L.E. and stuff like that. Um, and it was obviously it was created. It was written by Mike Myers. He's the primary star. He also plays several characters in all of them. But most prominently, he plays Austin Powers and his nemesis, Doctor Evil, who we find out in the third movie, Goldmember, are actually long lost brothers.
Oh,
So I
don't
guess
spoil it for those Gen Beta kids.
yeah. So essentially, he takes all the tropes of like 60s spy movies and kind of brings them into the 90s. What happens is Dr. Evil realizes he can't defeat Austin Powers and so freezes himself so that way he can come back out, awaken in the future when Austin is, the free love movement is gone and Austin is like no more, and, he can go back to being, rule as an evil doctor.
Yes, and
So
interestingly enough, Mike Myers did not want to play Doctor Evil.
really, I didn't know that.
Yeah, he actually wanted to play. He actually wanted to just be Austin Powers, and he wanted Jim Carrey to play Doctor Evil.
Oh, that would
And
have been amazing.
it would have been hysterical. But unfortunately, at the time, Jim Carrey was also filming Liar Liar, and the schedule just did not
Yeah.
line up at all. So
That's unfortunate.
unfortunately, I don't think that he thought, I don't think that Mike Myers. I think it just kind of came down to it. Mike Myers they were probably close to deadlines and everything, and they probably just said, and someone either suggested him to do it, or he might have just been describing the character to someone, and he was just getting into it because he's based on Lorne Michaels, who is the creator of Saturday Night Live.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, he really talks and has mannerisms like that.
Dr. Evil?
Yes, like Lorne Michaels really does. He does sound like that when he speaks,
I could see that.
and he has those odd mannerisms. And I guess being a cast member of Saturday Night Live for how long was he a cast member of Saturday Night Live? Like at least 5 years.
Mike Myers? Yeah, it was a while. He was part of probably my favorite years because he was there during the
Mine
Chris
too.
Farley. The Chris Farley era was like really the best era of Saturday Night Live, in my opinion.
I think so.
So yeah, he was definitely there during some of the best years.
And I think this was during a time where SNL was in that phase before it got too big, where these days I don't really know how approachable Lorne Michaels is. I've never been an SNL cast member or worked on Saturday Night Live, so I can't really tell you.
I hear it's very dog eat dog. That's
yes,
what I hear.
Yeah,
from multiple people who have on podcasts who have been on Saturday Night Live have said it's really a shitty environment because the comedians are really pitted against each other and like encouraged to steal each other's like work. So it's very not a fun environment, but everybody goes on to Saturday Night Live because it's you can't ask for a better boost to your career. Pretty much every like no-name comedian that went on Saturday Night Live exploded after being on Saturday Night Live into like leading men in movies.
Yeah, most of them. I mean, I think, well, yeah, it's the ultimate stepping stone, really, for a comedy career.
Yes,
like that's the springboard, pretty much.
Yeah.
But yeah, I imagine that it's similar to I imagine it's similar to a wrestling locker room in this, like during kayfabe years, where
definitely,
where everybody's concerned about their spot.
Yeah, the Shawn Michaels years.
Yeah,
I mean Hogan too. Hogan was another big one. Yeah. I actually recently heard a Taker was telling a story. It was his first year in the company, and he was facing Hogan, and gave Hogan a pile driver, and at this point, Taker had been in there for a year, so he was getting really big at this. He was really blowing up. Everybody loved.
Oh yes, Taker. When he at Survivor Series, when he won the title from him, when he pile drive, when he tombstoned him on the steel chair. Yes, I know this story.
And so Taker, he says that all of a sudden Hogan starts going, "Oh, you got me, brother, you got me," and Hogan was trying to set up Taker to basically get screwed in the industry. He was going to say, "Oh, Taker hurt me. He's not a good worker because he didn't protect me, and he hurt me with that pile driver." And that was the golden boy at the time, of course, Hogan.
Yep.
And luckily, Taker watched the tape and saw that the pile driver was fine, and Hogan's head didn't even touch the ground. And so that obviously,
he laid him down as gentle as you could in that environment.
Yeah,
but yeah, if you watch the tape, his head doesn't come close. He's inches above. He's inches above the mat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it was classic Hulk Hogan screw job.
I also think that Vince McMahon just had this. He already just had in his mind that from the minute that he saw Mark Calloway become the Undertaker, and just to see the reaction and to see how he moved and everything, he probably looked at it and just said, "Oh man, this is my guy. This is my guy forever." And when Vince does that, you could pretty much do no wrong. And it's very weird because Vince will turn around on a lot of people like that, but there's certain people where he will, if he believes that idea 1,000%, he's gonna stick with it no matter what. I mean, now obviously times have changed very quickly in the last couple of years where Vince McMahon is not even in charge of WWE for reasons we've talked about on this podcast, I'm sure, and we don't need to get into. The world already knows enough about the allegations and all the other things.
Ad nauseum.
Yeah, it's crazy shit. So if you want to look at that, just, either watch the Netflix documentary. They do a good job of covering that in the last episode, or just go on the internet and just figure out why Vince McMahon is an asshole, basically. And if you don't care for that, good for you.
Yeah.
But that's basically how SNL probably was, with a ton of politicking, and is probably with a ton of politicking and a ton of issues backstage, and a ton of people just trying to bury each other. Like, someone would probably not laugh at a table read to a joke, even if it was funny, and then shoot it down and say, "Oh, nobody really liked that sketch, so we're not going to even use it," just to try to get that sketch nicked, because they knew that it would have been, because they knew they wouldn't have gotten, they would have lost their spot on the show for that, or one of their sketches wouldn't have made it. And then,
or they would just outright steal the sketch.
I was going to say that. Then about 3 weeks later, a similar sketch shows up.
Yeah.
And everyone laughs at it because it's probably also very clicky too. So if they want somebody out, they'll get him out. It's definitely that kind of old school pro wrestling locker room environment over there. But anyway, so that's how Dr. Evil is. And then and it would have been amazing to see Jim Carrey in it. I wonder if it would have been better or if it would have been just as good. I'm not sure.
It's hard to say.
It would have been so different. I think the closest that we could get to seeing what that would look like is to see how he portrays Dr. Robotnik in the Sonic movies.
Yes.
Just because that's the only other time where he's an evil doctor.
Who's bald.
Who, yes, is also bald now. But yeah, that's only the first part of that. So to get back on track on the Austin Powers stuff, Mike Myers ends up playing 4 characters across the entire movie, which the other 2 are Fat Bastard and Goldmember.
Yes.
And he plays the characters so different, but also similar. And it's weird because Fat Bastard's voice is similar to Shrek.
Yes. I was going to say.
But they have very different nuances. There's some nuance to it, but you can see that they're coming from the same path.
Yeah.
Which, again, another role, like we've talked about on this show too, that Mike Myers originally did not intend on playing. As we know, it was supposed to be Chris Farley who was Shrek, and unfortunately, he passed away before that. And then
Hmm.
they asked his brother, to do the role, and he was just too grief stricken to really be able to do it.
Hmm.
So they ended up getting Mike Myers and recasting it. And now we have a whole franchise that is now coming out with it. What is it, 5 or 6 now that's coming out? I
I
don't
think
know. They just put out a trailer
5.
for it, and
yeah,
people feel a type of way about the
it's
look.
Shrek
I didn't.
5.
Jesus, I didn't really even notice the differences in the animation, but I'm
Uh,
not. I'm not
they
a diehard crazy Shrek guy, so I've only seen maybe the first two or parts of the third because it was on TV one
yeah.
day, but I didn't go out of my way to watch anything outside of maybe the second one.
Well, there's also an interesting theory that animation CGI is actually like going down in quality over the years instead of going up. And
Huh.
I think there is some validity to that, because if you look at early '90s movies that had CGI, first of all, they limited how much they used it. They only used it for impossible shots, which I agree with.
Hmm.
Um, but it looks a lot better. Like watch
They were better with shadowing.
Yeah, watch Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park specifically holds up today, and it's a 30-year-old movie.
Yep,
Older than 30. It's 35-year-old movie,
best
and
movie of all time.
it looks just as good today as it did in 1992 or whatever it came out. But even animated movies, I think the original Shrek is really like had
97 actually. I think
what?
Jurassic Park was 97.
No, Jurassic Park was the early 90s. 97 was The
No,
Lost World, I
you're
think.
right. You're right, 93.
93, okay. Yeah, The Lost
93.
World Jurassic Park came out in 97, I think. Um,
Yes, it was 97.
yeah. But you look at the original Shrek, and the graphics, the animation is really superb for the time period. And I don't think I didn't see the actual trailer. I just saw screenshots from the trailer, so I don't know what the animation itself looks like. But the design of Shrek, I will say, I think it looks worse than it did in the original. I think
I think that's what the issue was with this
it,
was the
if it,
animation design.
it feels like they're going for more cartoony, like a cartoony design this time, whereas the original Shrek had a more realistic kind of design to the characters.
It's probably got to do with some bullshit focus testing and target demographic
Yeah,
preferences.
I bet it's targeted demographic. They're probably trying to get kids to watch it, which I don't really. I mean, Shrek is kind of a kids movie, but not really.
It's got
So
something for everyone, I would say.
yeah, there's a lot of adult jokes in it. It's not a
There
straight up
are.
kids movie.
No, but I think it's one that I mean it's a family movie that caters to adults
Yes.
more than you expect. So that's what I would consider it. Which that's kind of always been the style of Shrek anyway, but
Yeah.
it's probably more to cater to Gen Z kids
Mm.
and probably some Gen Alpha kids that are probably 5. I don't even know when the hell does the Gen Alpha thing even start?
I'm not actually sure. It's
But
like
it's prob
2016 or 2018 or something.
all right. So yeah, maybe it's probably more to appeal to the Gen Z kids because I have seen something recently with some stuff for Magic the Gathering sets that have been coming out lately,
Mhm.
and they've been focusing on more neon palette colors and things like that. And it seems that Gen Z is really into the brighter neon colors, and that's who they're trying to pull in. And
Yeah.
they're also it's changing up the art style a little bit where they're focusing on more bigger eyes, I'm noticing, and more like cutesy features that the characters have
Hmm.
in the cards. And I think that also has to do with the Gen Z group. But I don't know. Anyway, we got to get back on track on this thing.
Yeah.
So, Austin Powers, tell the people what else it's about and what else is going on with this thing. And,
Uh, So basically, Austin.
Austin Powers needs to save the world, but
Yes, from
he
Doctor Evil.
yes,
Doctor Evil is his nemesis. As we said, also played by Mike Myers. Doctor Evil is based off of Ernst Stavro Blofeld from James Bond, who was pretty much James Bond's arch nemesis, who appeared in 8 of the Eon films: From Russia with Love, Thunderball, You Only Live Twice, On Her Majesty's Secret Service, Diamonds Are Forever, and For Your Eyes Only. So he was a big, and the appearance of Blofeld very heavily influences the appearance of Dr. Evil.
yes.
Um, so Austin himself is a spy in the 60s in Britain, and he's very much into the swinging 60s culture that was going on at the time in London, which was very much in line with the hippie culture in America. It was all about free love and bright pastel colors and rock music and, partying. And
They ended up using a lot more of the budget on making things very colorful and bright for the scenes that Austin is in.
Yeah. So Dr. Evil is, as I said before, in order to escape, freezes himself cryogenically and comes back out in the 90s. And then Austin also freezes himself and resurrects in the 90s and, is trying to stop his evil plan. I think one of the funniest scenes in the movie, in the first one, is when Dr. Evil's first unfrozen and like all of his evil plans that he had about like cutting a hole in the ozone layer and stuff had already happened just naturally because of humans. And he Verchicon, which was his front company back in the 60s, is now a multi-billion-dollar corporation. It's like he doesn't even have to be evil anymore in the 90s. He's already got like the rich and power and and
it's almost like his number 2, who was named number 2,
yes.
He's pretty much trying tries to imply that he's kind of just entertaining him.
Yeah,
and his demands at this point, where he doesn't seem to really care, and he's not interested. And he reveals it at the end of the first movie, where he managed to make things profitable in his absence, and it's this big publicly traded company and everything. And he really enjoys
legitimized it.
Yeah, and he enjoys being a legitimate businessman.
Yes.
And then, of course, he just hits the button on the chair and he burns alive.
Yeah.
Because why not?
The first movie, I think, was way more parodic of James Bond than the others. The others obviously still had that James Bond influence, but the first one really goes out of its way to parody James Bond, to the extent that Dr. Evil has one of his henchmen is a short Asian man who throws a shoe named Random Task, which is obviously a parody of Odd Job, who throws his hat. Right. So it's very much very heavily influenced by those early James Bond.
Right. It's more of a farce than a parody, I would say. Because it's very cheeky, it's very fourth wall breaking.
Yes.
And there's a lot of slapstick involved.
Yes.
But you know what it's a farce of, where the sequels, it's more developed as its own thing in its universe. Where the first movie, it's still figuring out what it is, and I'm really not even sure if they intended on there being a sequel to this, because they probably didn't think that it would go on to be as big of a success as it was.
Yeah, the first movie really does kind of wrap up in a way that they could have ended it there. It didn't have to have a sequel, and the way they bring it back in the sequel is pretty funny. So at the end of the movie, Austin has this female partner to help him take down Dr. Evil, named Vanessa Kensington, and she is the daughter of his old partner from the 60s, who they had like a romantic relationship. But Vanessa is very against his style, doesn't like that he, sleeps around, and he's got this free love mentality and all that.
Well, probably because that's
So
how
she,
her parent. That's probably because that's how her parents were, and she just growing up in that.
yeah,
A lot of times, whatever environment you grow up in, you kind of want to try to do the opposite as an adult.
yeah, and it's funny because she rebuffs him basically almost the whole movie, and then but finally starts to fall for him towards the end, probably in the second act, towards the end of the second act actually, and it's it. She kind of, I think she kind of starts to see that Austin's really, despite his mentality of free love and all that, he's stuck in the 60s, but he's also not that bad of a guy. Like, obviously, he's supposed to be the good guy because he's the good spy, but he also, there's one scene where she's drunk and wants to sleep with him after, like, again, rebuffing him for most of the movie. But he says no because it's wrong because you're drunk, and it's like hilarious that this oversexed, you know, swinger from the 60s is actually like a gentleman and doesn't try to take advantage of a drunk woman.
Well,
It's,
he only wants to do this under the right circumstances, and
yeah,
it's not really fair.
yeah,
Like, and I agree. It's one thing if both of you are drunk and stuff happens, but it's a totally other thing if even like more so if it's the guy
yeah.
don't take advantage of this person. Just try to help. Just try to help them. Try to
Hmm.
try to help them sober up, or if things get worse, take him to the hospital or something, or just drop him off, take him home, and just say, hey, I just want to make sure that they're okay, and either and then you could choose to wait while they sober up, or if they're in good hands already with their family or roommate or anything like that,
Hmm.
and or just close friends, just dropping them off and saying, "Hey, please let me know if she's okay,"
Hmm.
and then you go about your business instead of being an asshole and just taking advantage of them when they are clearly not in the right mind, especially if they've been rejecting you for however long.
Hmm.
It's very obvious that they are not in control of what's going on. So
Hmm.
be courteous, be kind, and don't do fucked up shit, basically.
Yeah. Uh,
But also, this guy. Also, you have to think about it from Austin's point of view. He's been like, he's gotten laid so many times that it doesn't even make like it. What would it really do? And I'm sure at all these other points, it's been really crazy and consensual and fun, and it's a fun time for everybody. He's not because I think the philosophy of a swinger is not to just it's not to have sex as much as possible. It's it's really just all about the fun and the free love and everybody's having a
yeah,
good time. It's
yeah.
more of the party element of it versus the act itself. It's more about that and the companionship and just kind of you're at a party and everybody's just happens to be doing this crazy thing, but
Hmm.
everybody's having a great time and everybody like there's no bad vibes and all that stuff. That's kind of more I think of where he's coming from, where he's not some douchebag just trying to get laid all the time.
Yeah. Uh,
Also, he's got also clearly because he's the swinging hipster guy from the '60s who had women flocking to him at every turn in his heyday. He and can still kind of do that after he's frozen in the what was then the present day. He doesn't need to try, and if you got game like that, you really like it kind of just comes to you. You
hmm.
really don't need to worry about that stuff. And so you're never going to be starved or depraved of it or anything. You're just going to be you and it's just going to happen. So you don't even have to worry about stuff like that.
Hmm.
You see, it's just like it's these shitty dudes who just have no game who are the ones who are going to take advantage of people like that. And honestly, I hope they like when this happens, I hope those dudes get whatever the hell's coming to them.
Hmm.
Anyway, that's my piece on that. Austin's got game. Austin's the man. So Austin's also a good dude.
Yeah. And and ends up marrying Mrs. Kensington, or Miss Kensington in the end.
Yes, he
And
does.
so he renounces his swinging lifestyle to be with one woman, and they could have ended the movie there, but of course in the second movie it starts off right at their honeymoon, which is where we left off, and it turns out Vanessa is a fembot, which is one of the robots that are created by Dr. Evil that look like beautiful women to try to seduce Austin and kill him, but his mojo is so strong he actually like overloads them and they explode. So in the second movie, Austin, is obviously sad that his wife is now a fembot and it is dead. But at the same time, he's actually like, wait a minute, I could go back to my swinging lifestyle. So he doesn't even care, really. Dr. Evil's plans are, again, they very much model like the classic 1960s spy villain, stupid world domination plans and holding the world hostage. In the first one, he's got Project Vulcan, which is a plan to drill down to the center of the Earth and nuke the core, so that all the volcanoes erupt at the same time, basically.
Would that even work that way?
I maybe. You would probably have to put a lot of nukes to make it, because you could theoretically build up enough pressure to make volcanoes erupt, but you'd have to have a lot of nukes to do that, because we're talking about trillions of tons of magma.
But I feel like if you had done something like that, then it would create a more catastrophic issue than every volcano exploding at the same time and drowning the Earth in a hot liquid magma.
Right?
Wouldn't it be worse?
No, probably not. Well, I mean, every volcano erupting at the same time would be bad enough.
Well, right, but wouldn't just nuking the Earth's core, wouldn't that cause some kind of tectonic shifts?
Maybe.
Anyway?
Maybe. Again,
right?
We're talking about a lot of... It's hard to explain because, nukes, you think, oh, wow, it's a huge explosion, but a volcano puts off like more energy than like 30 nukes, one volcano. So that's what we're kind of like talking about here. The energy that would be required to do this would be way more than one nuke.
Right. Or the favorite other plan of Dr. Evil's is just to have sharks with frickin' laser beams attached to their frickin' heads.
Which he doesn't get into the third movie.
Yes, at least he gets it eventually.
Yeah.
There is always that.
Well, it's funny because the whole plot, there's a plot line throughout all of the movies that Dr. Evil has a teenage son named Scott who hates him because first of all, he was frozen when Scott was growing up, so he didn't really get to have a relationship with him. And then Scott is like a typical 90s teenager and just hates everything his dad does, and the fact that his dad is evil, especially, and is a weirdo, it's like just, So
it just really gets him steamed.
Yeah, and so in the first movie they end up going to therapy, and there's multiple scenes of them of Dr. Evil just completely like they just hate each other. Scott makes like a snarky remark about something stupid that our Dr. Evil did, and then Dr. Evil's like does something to be like zip it, like that was, I think the second movie was the zip it thing.
Yeah.
Would you like to take a suckle of my zipper?
Yeah, the shush scene was... I'm afraid to talk. No, that scene was completely improvised, and I feel like the other one probably was too. In fact, 30 to 40% of the dialogue in the first Austin Powers movie was improvised, and I imagine that they took that course for the others as well, which that's another thing that I wanted to mention was that the director, what the heck is his name? I just had it, Jay Roach. He didn't want to use any fancy director tricks or anything of that nature. and he also knew Mike Myers and his work on SNL and everything.
Hmm.
So he didn't want to do all these fancy camera tricks because, and even though Wayne's World, Penelope Spheris had a lot, which we've also discussed on this show, mind you. This is the third
Yes.
episode where we've discussed, no, fourth episode where we've done Mike Myers stuff. I have never noticed that. This is a saga at this point.
Yeah.
So I don't know. The Love Guru is next. No, I
Oh,
hope not. That movie's supposed to be awful.
yeah.
The Penelope Spheris used a lot of really interesting camera angles as part of Wayne's World, where they even used them for gags, and it really helped play up the movie. Where in
Mm.
Austin Powers, he tried not to. Jay Roach tried to use as many simple shots as possible,
Hmm.
so that he could let Mike Myers just play with the area and just do his weird improv stuff. And I think a lot of the improv is what gives the Austin Powers franchise its charm. Similar to Curb Your Enthusiasm, which we spoke about last episode, I think that I think that there's something genuine about improv because it's totally in the moment, it's totally unscripted, and
Yeah.
it's just the person being the character and just doing things as the character would do without any guidance. This is just a full immersion. And whatever it is, it doesn't matter about whether the choice is wrong or right. It's just this is what the choice is in the instant because this is just it seems second nature as to what the character would do. And I think that's one of the things that gives Austin Powers the appeal that it does. And I think that's why so many people love these movies.
Hmm.
So good
Yeah.
on you, Mikey.
Yeah. Uh, so the whole thing with Scott kind of culminates in the end in Goldmember. Uh, he finally turns evil and he wants to take over the family business of
He
being
even goes
the evil villain.
bald.
He even goes bald. He wears I think he wears like a turtleneck, a black turtleneck, which I think is supposed to be kind of an homage to Steve Jobs in a way. I don't know if that's true, but it kind of does look
Oh,
like it.
I never noticed that. I'd have to watch it now. I haven't seen that movie since. Well, I haven't seen it in some time, but
Yeah.
the last time I probably still didn't know the hell Steve Jobs was or cared. I feel
Yeah.
like nobody really cared about who Steve Jobs was until he died. I don't know if that's just
No,
me.
people liked him back in those days because when Apple was inventing all those crazy things like the iPhone and the iPad and or the iPod rather and all that, it was huge. So
Eh, I don't know. I never really paid that much attention to him.
um,
He
so
did
he
cool
gives
things, but apparently Steve Wozniak was really the guy doing everything.
yeah, that's what a lot of people say. Steve Jobs was really just the face of the company, and Steve Wozniak was actually the brains behind everything.
Yeah, which, that makes sense.
Yeah. So anyway, he ends up he gifts Dr. Evil the sharks with laser beams to as as a way to like say, "Oh, thanks dad. I want to be now like evil like you. Here's a gift of sharks with laser beams." Because the whole joke is that Dr. Evil could never get sharks with laser beams attached to their heads because the sharks were like an endangered species or something. So they weren't allowed to capture sharks.
There
But
was there was always a different issue.
yeah, so
In the
Scott
first
is
one
able to do it.
I think they just get sea bass.
Yeah, it was foul-tempered sea bass or something.
Right. And then it just I forgot what happens in the second one, and then they just can't get it for whatever reason. And then
There's also
Goldmember Scott finally gets it for him, but
it,
by
going
then,
going back.
well,
Well, but then Dr. Evil decides to turn good, and that like just sends Scott over the edge.
of
And so
course.
Scott, they kind of set it up for Scott to be the villain in the next one, but we still haven't seen Austin Powers 4, and it's been like 20 years now, over 20
Right.
years.
Right,
So
and when they ask Mike Myers about it, it's either kind of been in development hell, but it hasn't been canceled.
yeah,
So I think that Mike Myers was trying to use the Pentaveret as a test
yeah,
to see if Netflix would buy an Austin Powers and
yeah,
let it happen. So I could see him shopping it around to one of the streaming services. Hopefully
yeah,
not Max because they'll just scrap it at the last minute just to write it off on their as a loss for their balance sheet for some stupid reason.
Mm.
Although interesting note with that, they sold the Coyote versus Acme movie to some studio thing called Ketchup Productions or something like that, and they're gonna release it next year. So at least it'll come out. But
Yeah,
you
that's
know,
interesting.
as we've said before, David Zaslav is a fucking asshole and an idiot.
Hmm.
So that's my 2 cents on that character,
Yeah,
and that's all I've got to say about that. But we'll see if I think that he's either gonna. I think that he's either gonna take it to. He's probably tried to take it to Netflix, and I feel like Netflix is not gonna do it because of the Pantavrit's lukewarm response.
yeah,
But Hulu, if I were a betting man, and I'm not, I think that Hulu might take it because Hulu has a whole new comedy initiative that they're trying to roll out, and they got Bill Burr to go over from Netflix to do his next string of specials, which his new one is out. It's pretty good. It's not his best, but it's entertaining enough.
mm,
But he's a big name, and they're probably going to get quite a few others to build it on here. So we'll see. I mean, Bobby Lee's first special is supposed to be on Hulu at some point, but it's Bobby Lee, so nobody. So for all I know, he'll just get cold feet about it and then scrap it.
why is he
So
known to do that?
he has just not wanted a special, or he's been too nervous about doing a special for so many years. I've
Mm,
heard him talk about this, and everyone has been saying you need to do a damn special, man.
yeah,
So he's supposedly finally going to be doing it this year, but I don't know. I got to see him in December at the Comedy Store, and he was easily the best one of the night.
nice.
Anyway,
So another thing I want to point out that they do really well is Doctor Evil always sets up Austin in some easily escapable situation.
yes,
And they actually make a joke about that in the first one where Scotty's like, "Oh, I got a gun in my room. We could both shoot him. Like we could shoot him together." And Dr. Evil's like, "No, I'm going to leave him in this easily escapable situation and not actually watch and assume that he dies." And it's such a huge like dig at those early spy movies that did that all the time. It's like so
yeah,
stupid thing that like obviously James Bond is going to get out of this stupid death trap, and it's always like the most convoluted stupid situation that they're going to use to kill him.
yes, and they always get caught monologuing about what this thing is
Yes.
supposed to do.
Yeah, and they do it in Goldmember too, because Goldmember's whole plan is to he likes to turn people's dicks into gold. So because he lost his own in an unfortunate schmelting accident, as he says. So that's his whole plan, is he straps you to this conveyor belt that slowly goes towards this molten gold that's pouring down to gildify your junk. So
That's
that
unfortunate.
yeah. So he uses that. Uh, there's just so many stupid situations like that where it's there's one of my favorites from Goldmember is that they're in this like they're on this steamroller in Dr. Evil's lair, and they're driving towards this like security guard. It's not it's
It's the first one.
no, it's the third one. Oh
Is
no, it's
it?
the first one. Is it the
No, it's
first
the
one?
first. No, it's the first
Oh,
one where the guy is screaming and is
yes.
going so slow that he could walk away
Yeah.
and not, and they would miss him completely.
And they're like
And
desperately saying like, get out of the way, get out of the
yeah,
way, and beeping, but the guy's just no.
and then
And
of course they whack him.
yeah. There's just so many hilarious situations like that. It's like so stupid, but it's hilarious. Um, there's also a recurring gag in all of the movies that there's some kind of rocket launched and it looks like an object.
That's my favorite part.
Yes. So there's the first one. It looks like a giant dick and balls. The second one, it's a fat boy. It's that the fast food chain Fat Boy flying through the air,
No, it's Bob's Big Burgers.
or Bob's Big. I
Uh,
thought it was Fat Boy or whatever. But it's a fast food mascot. And then the third one, it looks like boobs, and there's actually a hilarious joke on that one too, because they do all these double entendres where they're like, "Wow, that rocket really looks like some guy's Johnson," and it goes to the next scene, and he's talking to like the guy's name is actual Johnson, and they do that with the
yeah,
boobs one.
they even end up showing Woody Harrelson and Willie Nelson because the first names are
Woody,
other
yeah,
names for
Woody,
penises.
yeah. The boobs one though, and it's funny because they're always like double entendres. They're never saying the actual thing, but in the
Right.
boobs one,
I bet lawyers must have been pissed at this. So, not lawyers. I bet the censors and the ratings board were pissed off when they were watching
sure,
these scenes because they were probably like, "We can't do anything about this."
yeah. Well, and then so in the third
Oh,
one,
there must have been they must have been throwing things in those rooms, just
the
fuming.
uh the third one's the only one that actually says what it is for real though, because it's going through and it's like, oh, look at these juicy melons and all this other stuff, like. And then it cuts to the Osbournes, which at that time when the third movie came out, the Osbournes was the biggest show on television probably. And
Probably.
Ozzy's just like boobs. And they're like, what, Ozzy? He's like, they're these movie guys are all boobs. This is the same fucking joke they used in the last fucking Austin Powers movie. It's hilarious. The jokes are they set them up throughout the whole series and they always hit every single time
They really
hilariously.
do.
So the writing is pretty genius. I mean, Mike Myers is pretty hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't even gotten to the other characters in Austin Powers that Mike Myers plays. Like, we have Fat Bastard,
Yeah.
who he's just a big Scottish bro guy, and then later on he ends up becoming the sumo wrestling champion, and his arc is just that he's misunderstood, and he's a thug who has eaten a baby, who is just this literally the heavy, and I don't know who or what he's supposed to be a parody of, but he's this big Scottish guy who he's the obvious muscle or fat of the group who just is an assassin. And we go from seeing him being this lumbering killing machine, and then it turns out he's really sensitive about his weight and he hates himself and he's depressed and he eats because he's depressed to comfort himself. Then he ends up embracing it and he becomes a sumo wrestling champion because people love him for who he is because of what he can do with his size. So he ends up enjoying himself, and then eventually he goes on the Subway diet and he loses all the weight, but now he just has a lot of excess skin.
Yes.
And he does that thing, which the Subway diet, one, does not really work, and two, well, Subway has shied away from that because of things that happened with the spokesman Jared, who, if you want to look up what happened there, that could be a whole nother episode on.
Oh, there's a whole fucking documentary on that.
There is. So maybe go watch that. This guy was a real psycho. So, well, we'll see what happens to him at some point. Well, maybe we will, maybe we won't. I really don't care if we never see him again. But that has aged kind of poorly, that line.
Yeah.
However, the South Park episode where Jared has AIDS has aged like fine wine. Because his aides are personal trainers who helped him lose the weight, and he lied and said that it was a Subway diet. But the joke that Jared has AIDS now is just so much funnier because he turned out to be a real monster.
Yeah.
So there's that. But Fat Bastard is just a lot of people's favorite characters too. And then there's the gag it's the third one, I think, where his wireman, like, he's doing Matrix. It's an obvious parody of the Matrix, and he's doing
Mhm.
all these crazy flips to go over to get to Austin, and his wires get jumbled up, so he's just suspended in midair and he's stuck,
Yeah.
and he's just complaining about how awkward this is.
Hmm. Yeah, fine. And then they shoot him down.
Yeah.
There's
And he ends up helping them in the end, I think, because
well, he
Foxy
get,
Cleopatra, Beyonce's character, ends up talking him through this stuff, and he ends up feeling better. Of course, she knocks him out because she has to, but she's probably the first person who listens to him, and he ends up having a change of heart because of that.
yeah.
So he gets his redemption, and I really appreciate that they thought about that and they decided to give him that redemption arc because it's really fitting, and it's kind of one of those things where you think about the character and what they could have done, especially in the 90s, early 2000s, and they took it in a direction where you probably didn't think that they would.
Hmm.
So I really appreciate that. And then the fourth character is Goldmember,
Old
which you
member.
can you've talked a little bit about him, but you can describe him a little bit more in his mannerisms.
Yeah, so he's a Dutch person.
Wow, you
And
got all that, everybody.
he loves gold, and he lost his junk in an unfortunate smelting accident. And he's really the big bad of the third movie. He kind of helps Dr. Evil out, but it ends up being the villain in the end because Dr. Evil turns good. Um but he's got a very heavy Dutch accent, and he's very bizarre. I mean, all the
Yes,
villains are very extremely bizarre and grotesque, but he's
I think he takes the cake with
yeah.
the dead skin
Yeah,
collection,
yeah, so
which he likes to eat.
he peels skin off of himself and then eats it or puts it in a box to save for later. And he also is extraordinarily flexible. He's able to like bend his legs completely back behind his head essentially. And yeah, he's just bizarre, and everyone makes fun of the fact that he's Dutch, which is one of the most hilarious things. There's a great line.
He's also from the roller disco era.
Yes, yeah. There's a great line where he Austin Powers' father, who's in the movie also,
Yes,
is
which I
talking.
wanted to get to.
Yeah, he's confronts Goldmember and he says, "There's only two things I hate in this world: people that don't tolerate other people's cultures, and the Dutch." And it's such a subtle joke that if you don't, it kind of flies over your head right away because because he's not tolerating somebody else's culture, you know.
Yeah,
So
which they were actually considering Sean Connery to be Nigel Powers instead of Michael Caine, who they ended up
uh,
getting.
that would have been
Which
great too.
they would have come full circle, but they ended up not do. He just what they just weren't able to get him for whatever reason, or they considered
Hmm.
him, and then I think they just went with Michael Caine. But I think Michael Caine is just. I think he's better suited for the role, to be honest with you.
Hmm. Yeah, he really did a great job as Nigel Powers. uh Austin Powers 3 also it like kind of expounds upon Austin's daddy issues because every single time something significant happened in Austin's life, he goes to tell his dad, "Stand up, dad, take a bow," and his dad isn't there. uh so when he like graduated from spy school, and when he gets knighted by the queen, you know.
Somehow
So
he's just not there.
no. And
I don't know how
he's
you
also
miss those. I don't know how you miss that.
he's also very insecure about his dad because his dad is also a super spy, and
Hmm.
it is arguably, or implied to be rather, a better spy than Austin is. Like, he's a legend in the spy community. Um, so I think there's some insecurity there. Austin feels like he can't live up to his father.
Yeah, which I also like how they explore that part in the third one because the
Mhm.
first you get another layer to both Austin and Doctor Evil,
Yes.
which takes us to Mini Me, who
Yes.
Scott also cannot stand because it's Doctor Evil's clone who is a dwarf.
And he treats better than his son.
Yes, because it's because it's him basically.
Yeah. They have a very it's funny because he treats Mini Me almost like a toddler. Like he has him in a car seat all the time, and because it's
He's
a
just
short
a
person.
little guy.
Yeah, and but they also they'll sing songs together, which is one of the most hilarious things.
Yes.
They'll- they
I
sing.
mean,
They have
the
multiple musical numbers with Mini Me and Doctor Evil.
yes, which I mean, it starts with just the two of us, and then it
Yeah,
goes into Hard Knock Life in the prison camp, and it's amazing.
yeah, it's hilarious.
But
Uh,
yeah, it's just so goddamn funny.
Yeah. And then in the third movie, Mini Me also he gets kind of put when Scott starts to turn evil, Mini Me gets pushed aside because Dr. Evil's happy that Scott is evil now. And so Mini Me decides to defect and he starts dressing up as Austin. So he becomes like a Mini Me version of Austin,
Yeah,
which is pretty hilarious.
they do have to. I like that they have to take him with a spray bottle and squirt at him when he starts
Yeah.
humping something,
Yeah.
like he's a little dog.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's just very ridiculous nuances, but Mini Me ends up saving the day.
Mhm.
It's just funny. We also have Scott's mom, Frau Farbizna, who just Mindy Sterling is just hysterical. But
Yeah.
there's also the point. I mean, the only point that I really wanted to make about her is just that she's very funny and probably did a lot of improv stuff too in this movie. I feel
Mhm.
like most people probably improvised a lot of their lines, and not just Mike Myers. But just the scene where she's explaining Scott to Doctor Evil, he's just that whole "I'm late." No, I saw you. You were here on time. No, I'm late. Just it's one of my favorite scenes. For some reason, that joke gets me all the time.
Yeah. I like that she's introduced as the leader of the militant arm of the Salvation Army.
What does that even mean?
I don't know.
But there's just so many ridiculous moments in this movie to even the point where it completely breaks the fifth wall even in Goldmember where they end up having the Austin Powers movie within a movie, which supposedly that was directed by Steven Spielberg.
Mhm.
And they end up just getting Tom Cruise to play Austin Powers and Danny DeVito to be Mini Me. It's just so goddamn funny. And they do it's this whole thing, and then there's also the opening sequence, which pulls you in from the beginning. We haven't even talked about that.
Mhm.
And then the next thing that I would like to discuss is just the many women of in Austin Powers' life.
Mm.
But
They're
the
much like Bond girls.
yes,
They also have double entendre names like a lot of vagina.
well, of
But
course, Felicity
obvious,
Shagwell,
yes,
Foxy Cleopatra, who was obviously supposed to be Foxy Brown.
yeah. And then there's the Gold Member has the movie within the movie that has oh, what was it? Gwyneth Paltrow as Dixie Normus,
That's right.
and Danny DeVito plays Mini Me.
Yes.
That was just hilarious.
And I think Kevin Spacey is Dr. Evil,
Yeah,
who,
Kevin
you
Spacey's
know,
Dr. Evil and Tom Cruise is Austin Powers. That's an interesting way that they
well,
introduce it because they start off with the parody movie, with Tom Cruise and all that, and you're like, what the hell is this? Like, where's Mike Myers? And then it cuts out, and we see that it's a movie, and Steven Spielberg is directing the Austin Powers movie called Austin Pussy, and
supposedly he did really direct that scene.
yeah, which is hilarious. Uh,
Why not?
so then it goes into this big dance number that opens up the movie. And we get to see Quincy Jones, who actually did the theme song of Austin Powers. He's a conductor, and so we get to see him conducting the actual theme song, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And there's just something about the opening sequence of Austin Powers where you just get that whole 60s vibe, Beatles era Sergeant
Mm-hmm.
Pepper thing going.
Yeah.
And then there's the whole procession of just all of these people. It opens up like a Broadway musical, to be honest with you. And that is pretty much that I feel like that scene is more important than people give it credit for, because not only have people embarrassed themselves by duplicating this over the years, and I have a story about that, but it hooks you in from the very beginning, and it tells you already what the character is about and what their world is,
Yeah.
what you need to know. It just sums everything up of just what you need to know. And other than Basil, who unfortunately and like
Basil
they
Exposition, who
they keep who all he does is monologue, and then they refer to his mother being hideously ugly. But
it's a
but
man, baby.
that joke has not aged well.
No.
But it's still funny. It's still
Yeah.
funny to this day, but it's not. But it they could not make that. They could, if they made it today, they couldn't use that joke for sure would go right out. They couldn't
Yeah.
use that line. But the opening sequence, just from all of the shots and all of the processions and everything like that, and all the fancy gaudiness and how big they do that opening musical sequence,
Mm-hmm.
it takes you into that world, and you're immediately pulled in, and you're thinking, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I get it. I don't need anything else. It's almost like it almost reminds me it almost reminds me of a pro wrestling if there was a wrestler who that was the presentation and this is their Titantron
Yeah.
entrance thing, their entrance video. That's pretty much the short video package that sums up who this wrestler is before they even get to the ring, and the ring entrance is that kind of what they did for Adam Rose for that character.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much, if they did that, it would work, which they did for the Adam Rose character to a degree, and it did kind of get over. They just didn't really know what to do with him or push him.
Yeah.
But it was successful, and they did it in a similar fashion to Austin Powers. But the minute that you see that opening sequence, you know exactly what the hell this movie is.
Mm-hmm.
It sets the tone for the entire rest of the picture. And then we also have the other weird segue sequences where it's just Austin and his flower girls, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah. It kind of reminds me of
his fake job is a photographer, by the way.
Yeah. Is it really his fake job, or does he just do it on the side for fun?
He might really do it on the side for funsies.
Yeah.
And I was watching an interview with Mike Myers where when he talks about the creation for the Austin Powers thing, it's obviously inspired by, as we said, 60s spy things, but there was always in these spy things, they were always a spy by night, so it was always
That's true.
they're moonlighting as whatever, but they're really a spy, so it was just, photographer by day, Britain's greatest spy by night.
Yeah.
And just all these swinger guys just had, for whatever reason, they just had a day job or a fake day job as a cover.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But that's what they did with this, and I love the opening sequence, and I feel like if they didn't do the opening sequence, or if it got cut from the movie, or if they, I don't think that it would be, I don't think it would have did as well, because I don't think that it would have hooked in that many people from the get-go.
Well, I think the third one had the biggest budget, and it definitely shows. They did that huge opening sequence like on purpose. Like, this is the big budget one, everybody, and this is what it's going to be about, the third one had so many great jokes too. The Godzilla joke where they're they run into this giant statue of like a dinosaur, and they're driving through the streets of Tokyo, and all the people start running away, and one guy's like, "Run! It's Godzilla!" and the guy, and the other guy's like, "Oh, well, technically, since international copyright, we can't say it can't be Godzilla." And
And then the other guy's just like, "Well, we should run around and act like it is Godzilla." And he's like, "Okay." And they just do.
Though it isn't.
Yeah.
There's just so many great jokes like that. There's
Really fun.
so much fourth wall breaking, and it's done very tastefully and hilariously.
Yeah, and I think the further the series goes, the more wall breaking ends up happening throughout each movie.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody's ever counted the amount of times in each movie that someone has broken the fourth wall. Well, maybe they have as a drinking game.
Yeah.
But I would like to know if the number of times that they break the fourth wall in each Austin Powers movie increases with each sequel. I feel like that's an interesting challenge for somebody listening to this thing. If you do that, just tell us in the comments or something that you did it and what the tally is. I would be very curious to know. But don't do it as a drinking game because we are not responsible for any. We're not responsible for any of this stuff. If you choose to do that, that's your choice. We are not responsible. We did not tell you to do it. But if you'd like to count the number of times in a friendly environment, that's fine.
Yeah.
Anyway, drink responsibly. That's our PSA. Now, I would like to talk about the ladies of the Austin Powers franchise because it would be nothing without the women. The Austin girls, I guess you can affectionately call them.
Yeah.
But this is where the real power is, and we've talked about Elizabeth enough already, who is just very, she's just beautiful, intelligent woman.
Vanessa.
Yes, Vanessa. My apologies, Vanessa, who is beautiful, intelligent woman, already has a connection to Austin from her mother, but she's an ass kicker. She's basically been training to be a spy her entire life because she wants to go and do what her mother did. And then she ends up ironically having the same partner all these years later. And at first she's kind of like, why do I have to have this guy as, as my partner, which we've already covered here, ends up falling for him, the whole work and all that stuff. But they could not have gotten anybody other than Liz Hurley to be her. And for years, I had a huge crush on Liz Hurley just simply because of this movie.
Yeah.
But they couldn't have done any better with this casting. Who I believe John Papsadera, who's his more recent achievements is the Yellowstone stuff, which is one of the biggest shows out there right now. A lot of people love this thing. I don't have Paramount, so I haven't been able to watch it, but apparently it's a big deal show. But that guy, John Papsadera, has cast just about everything in the 90s, and he's like just a legend in the business. They could not have cast anybody better than the cast that they had for all of these movies, but especially the women. And getting to, which, we've already discussed the story of how we end up getting Vanessa out of the picture in the first movie, in the second movie, which then leads us to Felicity Shagwell, played by the lovely Heather Graham, which this actually made her career for her because she hadn't really been in a movie in 2 years, and she was just considering just bottom of the barrel acting roles that she didn't want to do. Like one of which she was on the fence between taking a softcore like Skinamax movie just because she needed the money, and her career just wasn't going anywhere. She gets this call, and it ends up really changing her life.
Yeah.
But Felicity Shagwell is, well, she's different from Vanessa Kensington because she's a lot more fun. She's with it. She already knows who he is. She respects him. But like she respects him and she's into him, but she wants to stay professional.
Hmm.
So that's the different thing there where she doesn't want to act on she doesn't want to act on any of her emotions or what she'd like to do because she's meeting her hero who she's dreamed about working with, and she respects him so much that she doesn't want it to get in the way of her career, which is respectable and also totally understandable. But also she's just trying to keep things at the professional level, and eventually the hearts do what the hearts do. But I haven't seen it well. Does he pursue her really? Or is he just does he just kind of understand the lay of the land and it just kind of happens that way? I don't recall how
Who
the dynamic is.
who is it?
In The Spy Who Shagged Me,
I I don't remember.
I don't remember if he pursues her or if it just kind of happens.
Yeah.
I think it's the latter, where
Yeah,
you
I
just
think
want to
so.
keep it professional because she's fun. She gets him, and
Hmm.
they don't have to. There isn't there isn't really a clash there, but they're both understand. But they both just want to be professional about it, and then things just they just kind of end up the way they do because who could resist Austin's charm and all that chest hair? Let's be honest.
Hmm.
And I think I don't think that there's not like a sad end to their affair. I think her career just takes off a little bit more and she just kind of goes and takes the opportunity. So
Yeah.
it just kind of fizzles out. Where then we get to Goldmember and we get Foxy Cleopatra, who this movie is pretty much what brought Beyonce to the box office.
Yeah.
Because at that point, she probably did some little things here and there, and like making appearances on TV shows every once in a while, and maybe she had a guest spot in a movie where she just was there. But I think this was her first leading role.
It was, yeah, well, it was definitely her breakout role.
Yeah,
She had been in another movie previous, but it was like a not known movie, I guess.
yeah, but this shot her into the stratosphere because I think
Yeah.
after that she started becoming, well, not that she wasn't a hit maker before that, but but you couldn't get away from her after this movie took off.
Yeah.
You
Well,
couldn't you couldn't
she
avoid you couldn't stop you couldn't ignore her if you tried.
yeah.
Like if you went to go crawl under a rock to try to get away from Beyonce, the rock would have an ad for Beyonce's album underneath it.
Yeah.
But we've got Foxy Cleopatra, who obviously, like we said before, is a reference to Foxy Brown, who for who those who were not around in the '70s or didn't or haven't been enlightened to the wonderful world of blaxploitation, they've she was she was pretty much a tough as nails cop who was going to get the job done, and
Yeah.
she was beautiful and dangerous and didn't need a man for nothing, and Foxy Cleopatra is very much like that. She's got the cool '70s flair and everything, which is kind of the which is kind of the undertone of the second of Goldmember in general, where the first one is more about the '60s and not wanting to change with the times into the '90s world,
Hmm.
where the second one is just kind of, yeah, I'm in the now. I'm living my life. It's whatever. It's fine. I've I've moved on. The past is the past. And then in Goldmember, we get this. '70s revival thing
Yeah.
with.
Well, time travel is it kind of
Oh,
it's
also, I do want to say just before we get to that, I do want to just to add to Foxy Cleopatra. She ends up the women in the Austin Powers movies end up resolving all of the issues and saving the day a lot quicker
Mhm.
than Austin. Austin ends up kind of taking the credit because of who he is, but the women are always the ones doing everything and making sure that everything's right, double checking, and also just resolving everything and doing all the critical thinking for the mission. They're doing all the heavy lifting, is what I meant to say in not too many words.
Mhm.
But you have Cleopatra, who's clearly coming up with the plans, and she discusses all of these layers, and she gets to know Mini Me, and know she gets to talk to she gets to know Fat Bastard. Oh, Felicity Shagwell also gets to know Fat Bastard a little bit more than she wants, but she has to plant a bug up his butt,
Yeah.
and she has to do unceremonious things to do those things. But she takes one for the team quite literally, and Foxy also gets to know and understand with these characters and empathize with them. And it's something that we don't really see with the other two ladies in Austin's life.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to see how differently all three of them are written. I think Foxy Cleopatra might be, they're all different, but I think, and the dynamics are all different too, where Foxy Cleopatra is more about taking charge than
Mhm.
Austin is, which is different than the other ones. In the first one, with Vanessa, the dynamic between the two of them is just Vanessa is they're just kind of clashing constantly because Vanessa is seeing the proper by the book way to do things, and she doesn't have time for any excursions or to not be serious.
Yeah.
Where then we get to where Austin is, nothing but not serious, but still doing things as however it is that he's doing and getting all the job and accolades, and she's almost like off put by how just seemingly oblivious he is, but that's just the way that he operates. Then with Felicity Shagwell, she's kind of they're on the same page. So everything flows pretty okay. They have a similar sense of humor. They gel really nicely. So that dynamic is pretty straightforward. And then whereas in Goldmember, the dynamic is more Austin is kind of going through his crises over his daddy issues and everything, and just we're learning more about the character and we're getting to understand the character more, and he's going through his stuff and he's kind of making mistakes because of this. And Foxy Cleopatra is the one who's steering the ship, taking charge, getting everything done. Where that's just we just haven't really seen that before.
Mhm.
So I think the dynamics in the relationships are just really interesting across all the movies between the two of them.
Yeah.
Anyway, where were we before? I
Uh
took a long time to make my point.
yeah, out of I was going to say time travel kind of plays a big
Yes.
role in all three movies. The first one is more because they're frozen and they go forward in time. But both the second and third movie feature multiple time machines, so they travel back and forth through time. And in fact, Fat Bastard goes back in time to steal Austin's mojo while he's still frozen. Oh no, Fat Bastard steals it because he was a soldier there, and then Doctor Evil goes back in time to retrieve it from him.
Mm.
But they always go back and forward in time. The time travel wasn't really well explained. They just do it.
No, they're just somehow able to do it, and it's just an average everyday thing.
Yeah.
They don't really make too big of a deal out of it. They're just able to time travel for some reason.
Hmm. Yeah. So, um,
Well, my
but
story about the theme song, by the way, my in one of the talent shows or PTA, there was a talent show or PTA variety show or something like that. My mother was in the PTA when I was a kid in elementary school, and they did a weird PTA variety show one year, and I'm not really sure who it was for,
Mhm.
but parents went for some reason because everybody kind of knew somebody who was in the PTA, so they just went for moral support, or there was just no sports game on that night. I don't friggin' know. But they went, and for some weird reason, they chose to do the Austin Powers number for one of the numbers of this variety show.
Huh.
The other was one of the songs from Chicago,
Mm.
and it was very uncomfortable. Both were very uncomfortable, and I don't remember what else happened during these. It may have been the talent show and they threw in some PTA numbers, but I don't know who it was for. It was just, it was very odd seeing the principal being forced to be Austin Powers. Well, he probably didn't force much. It was, and all of the other PTA members were pretty much women. It was pretty much unanimously women,
Mhm.
and maybe a couple of male teachers. And they all had to act like they were into him and they were doing the Austin Powers thing in the run out and they were running down the aisle to open the show. It was very strange. The Chicago thing was far worse because they had to act like they were doing a burlesque performance for him and the other male teachers. It was very awkward, especially for me. I never viewed my mother the same way again.
Mm.
And well, my dad probably liked it, but I didn't.
Oh God.
So it was very uncomfortable, and you could, well, my therapist is going to have a lot to work with. Anything else to change the topic, please? I'm
um.
begging you.
I don't know. I don't think I have anything else.
Can you sense my desperation?
Well,
Some would say I brought this on myself, but those people are assholes.
well, if the shoe fits.
Well, it doesn't, so you must have quit.
Oh
Oh
God.
gosh, but this, I love this franchise. I think it's one of the funniest goddamn things that
Yeah.
I've seen in my lifetime for sure.
Yeah.
Uh, the only interesting thing that I will add to all of this stuff is that Austin Powers was made instead of Wayne's World 3, which I don't know if we spoke about this on
I don't
in
think we
Wayne's
did.
World.
I don't know if we did.
Because I don't think that we spoke about the Wayne's World franchise too much. I
Yeah.
think we spoke more about the first movie and we
Yeah.
touched on the second,
Hmm.
where, and I guess we talked about the possibility of a three, but I don't think that we mentioned this or had known this at the time. But Wayne's World 3 was, it would have been made, and Mike Myers had to choose whether he wanted to do Wayne's World 3 or Austin Powers, and he ended up writing Austin Powers, and he believed in this movie, and with good reason. Instead of just taking the easy money with Wayne's World 3, he decided, no, let me take the risk and let me do this new movie, and we'll do something else, and we'll see what happens, which was obviously the better choice.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably. I don't see how Wayne's World 3 could have topped Austin Powers.
I don't think so.
And
I don't even know how I can't even imagine what the plot of Wayne's World 3 really could have been. It's just Wayne enjoying married life with Cassandra, and then something else happens that's either going to take Wayne's World off the air, or Wayne's World goes, it has to go into another direction and he doesn't like it, or Wayne's World takes off and he accidentally becomes the person he hates.
maybe.
Like, I guess the only logical thing is Wayne's World takes off and they end up owning they end up owning a channel or station or something, and it becomes an MTV, and Wayne is running it, and it becomes a corporate big shot by accident, and Garth kind of has to step away and tell him, dude, you've really changed. You've become exactly everything you hate.
Hmm.
And Wayne's like, you don't get it. This is the big time. And they go their separate ways for a minute, and then Wayne has to kind of find himself again because Cassandra is then just like, you're turning into a real prick. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't really like. I guess that's the most logical direction that Wayne's World 3 could have gone in, but I don't think it would have been that good. And I think Austin Powers is obviously the stronger choice. And I'm not even saying that because we know what happened, but I think in general, it would have been a better choice to just do something different, regardless of what that thing was. Which, if history is any, if history is any indicator, most of the time when people take the risk, it usually pays off.
Yeah.
So good on Mike Myers and good on me for bailing myself out of that situation. How about that? But if we've got, oh, well, I guess one more thing. Since we're on the topic of sequels and we've said that we don't know what's happening with Austin Powers 4, and we've already
Yeah.
said what the possibility of what Mike Myers could be doing to try to get an Austin Powers 4 together.
Hmm.
Or, I mean, he also just has probably enough money where he could just fund it and see what happens and take a risk
Yeah.
again. But I don't know. Maybe he wants to, maybe he doesn't. It's really up to him. He has fuck you money, so he could do whatever the hell he wants.
Yeah.
But what plot device do you think we could see in Austin Powers 4? What do you think that movie could look like?
That's tough. I mean, obviously they set up Scott as the new villain,
Yeah, I think we
and
keep that.
yeah, and probably something with Doctor Evil and Austin taking like having to team up to take him down. Like maybe he's
Sure.
actually competent, unlike Doctor Evil. He becomes a competent villain, and Austin can't stop him. So he has to like team up with Doctor Evil so Doctor Evil could give a perspective from an evil genius standpoint, for how to beat him kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. I could buy that.
Yeah,
Where Scott
it's probably the most
and
obvious.
yeah, because I think Scott should end up taking over the world, and I think he should use the sharks with laser beams attached to their heads.
Yeah, yeah. Everything Scott does is what Doctor Evil says he wants to do, but could never do. He's
Yes,
just
I mean Doctor Evil even
becomes the
gets
ultimate evil.
he even gets the ransom amount wrong,
Yeah,
where he announced like the first time in the first movie his ransom is too little because just inflation and just general access to money and the amount of money that people let into the world has just been such a stupid amount where $1 million is nothing to the UN, so they just laugh him out of the building and they
Mhm.
don't take him seriously. And then he asked for way too much money where it's an even stupider amount because nobody possibly has that. That number hasn't even been reached, and then he just gives up basically.
Yeah.
But what else do we think could happen in Austin Powers 4? Do we get Nigel Powers to come back
I don't. That'd be a tough
in
sell to get
some
Michael.
capacity?
I don't even know if Michael Caine actually acts anymore.
I don't know. I don't think you do.
He's so old.
I don't think you bring him back just because.
No, I mean they're
I
bringing
think
freaking Ian McKellen and freaking what's his name? Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart are coming back for the new Avengers movie, and they're like ancient. So
why are they doing this movie?
I don't know.
I didn't even bother to look at the casting. I just saw that they announced Robert Downey Jr. to play Doctor Doom however long ago, I guess
which is
last year.
I think that was the stupidest thing ever.
I think so. I
That
mean, it
that's
just shows
Disney.
that,
That's Disney desperate that they have no other options. So they're like, "Oh, bring back Robert Downey Jr. Maybe he'll save the franchise again."
yeah, no. They pretty much I don't understand how Disney has been able to kill Marvel and Star Wars, my two favorite things. They've been able to kill those things. I I am not going to say that they killed The Simpsons because The Simpsons' enemy is just time and being
Yeah,
on the air for too long.
yeah,
I don't think Disney really did anything that that wouldn't have happened regardless. So I'm gonna they get a pass on The Simpsons from me,
yeah,
but I think but they've managed to kill my two favorite things. I
yeah,
will say that Daredevil Born Again has brought me back in, but just one and done for Daredevil because I like that they pretty much left the Netflix show alone and continued it, and
yeah,
they didn't do anything to deviate it. They didn't Disneyfy it. It's they just gave these people more money. They just gave these cooks a better kitchen
hmm,
and better quality food, but they didn't. But they left them alone.
yeah,
So I at least appreciate that.
yeah.
But otherwise, I don't know. What else do you do? What who who does he get? Like, what kind of lady does he get?
I don't know. That's tough.
We haven't seen a just kind of going down the natural conclusion. We haven't seen a redhead. We haven't seen an Asian lady, and we haven't seen a Spanish lady.
Yeah,
So
we've seen Asian.
no, I mean as his Austin girl.
Well, I mean,
Like
there was
it, like,
we Fook you and Fook me.
no, I know that we've got the twins, Basil, but I mean as his
Twins, Basil.
I mean as his partner. Who? Where do we go from there? Do we get an older?
Yeah,
Do we get a older Lucy Liu, and we kind of go for the mature angle? I don't know. Do we get? Do we end up going? Do we end up going younger? Do we end up going someone who's around his age? Because now his arc is that he's kind of sown his wild oats enough, and he's just ready to settle down and have children. Maybe
mm,
he wants that. I guess I could see that he wants to be a family man, and he's just kind of done with the spy game and and being a swinger because at his age there's kind of no point to it anymore, and he just wants to be a better Faja, or he wants to be a Faja. I don't know. What do we get with Doctor Evil? What do we get with that dynamic? He wants to just make up for lost time and be a better and just get to know his brother a bit.
yeah.
And he suddenly becomes a humanitarian, and he comes out of the shadows, and he ends up becoming this big philanthropist or something. I could see that. And then he either gets pulled back into the crime world if they want to do a cop out, or he just has to stop Scott.
Yeah.
And that's where Austin recruits him, where Dr. Evil is just happy being a philanthropist and being this charitable man and everything and going the opposite direction. Where what if Dr. Evil does do all those things and he ends up having, a beautiful wife and like 5 kids, and he ends up being this wonderful person, and he goes completely in the opposite direction and goes clean and dedicates his life to helping others, and then Scott Evil takes over the world, and Austin has to kind of get him out of retirement basically so that he can help him. Meanwhile, Austin still has that thought where he kind of wishes that he got that life. So you now see it reversed, where Dr. Evil was jealous that Austin got all the praise and recognition, where Austin is now jealous that it's happening to Dr. Evil.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think there are interesting ways that a fourth movie could play out,
Yeah.
but I'm not sure if we'll even see it.
Yeah. I don't know. It's hard to say now at this point.
Yeah. I don't know. Well, if you've got an idea, I would like any of you people listening out there in digital media device land to just, let us know in the comments, let us know via email if you're shy. All those things are in the descriptions, so you could do whatever. Or you could just, give us $1 on Patreon and join the Discord, and you could just talk to me and Rob.
Yeah.
It's just cost you $1. The usual amount. And that's all I've got to say about that. I just want to say thank you, everybody, for taking out the time. What's your favorite Austin Powers moment? Let us know about that too. Just I
Like, comment, and
appreciate.
subscribe.
Yeah. Oh God. Just do all those things. Do all those things if you want, and if you don't, I really don't give a shit. But this has been Why Does This Exist? I've been Chris,
And I've been Rob.
and remember, question everything.
Good night, everybody.